In the latter dusk of our unfinished age, when the wires of the world still hummed with half-kept promises, and the bright machinery of men had not yet agreed upon its final purpose, there lived a quiet conviction among a certain few that history had not grown old, but merely impatient. The earth, clothed in smoke, signal, commerce, and dream, seemed not exhausted, but expectant, like a great ship at harbor straining against its ropes, eager for a tide not yet named. Above the cities, where towers blinked like iron constellations, and the sleepless windows of men and women shone like candlelight trapped in crystal, there spread each evening a vault of stars so ancient and so serene that all present striving appeared at once very small and yet terribly noble. For what is mankind, if not a creature forever building ladders toward lights it cannot yet touch? We are a race of bridge-makers and fire-bearers, of map-drawers standing upon shorelines that did not exist until our feet disturbed the sand. There came in such an hour a young thinker who kept no throne, wore no crown, and uttered no prophecy, for he did not wish to play the gaudy seer or the market hawker of tomorrow. He desired no cheap thunder. Yet in his breast there stirred a feeling both solemn and electric, that the future must be approached not as a carnival guess, nor as a superstition draped in silver robes, but as a road one might prepare for with honest hands. He believed there should be, if not certainty, then at least a lantern, if not a promise, then a direction, if not the whole design, then enough of the pattern for the worker, the learner, the builder, and the dreamer to know where best to place their strength. So he climbed by thought beyond the age's noise, and beheld, in the inward firmament, a vision of the centuries coming on. First he saw that speech itself, and the weaving of minds across distance, must still undergo refinement. The world had made itself loud before it had made itself wise. Messages flew faster than falcons, faster than storms, faster even than the remorse of those who sent them. Yet clarity lagged behind like a lame courier on a muddy road. The great task before humanity, he thought, was not merely to speak more swiftly, but to understand more truly. Media, knowledge, signal, image, language, memory, these would need taming, as wild horses are gentled before a carriage can be trusted on a mountain pass. Once communication ceased to be merely abundant and became at last coherent, then the gears beneath civilization would begin to catch with one another. Then the machine, so long rattling and magnificent, might at last move with intention. And after this, he saw travel rise. Not travel as the wealthy have often known it, mere leisure, adorned in glass and luxury, but travel as a civilizational unfolding. Roads reimagined, skies made intimate. Distances that once sat like kings between peoples would be dethroned. New energies, cleaner and stranger, would come whispering first from laboratories, then muttering through markets, and at length would stride openly through the world like young emperors. The old fuels, black and buried, would be challenged by brighter inheritances. From this contest would emerge engines more efficient, vessels more elegant, and means of movement that would make the clumsy triumphs of prior centuries appear as ox carts beside comets. He saw caravans of the future gliding in silence, ships that seemed to skim not only over sea and land, but over the ancient burden of waste itself. He saw freight moving like blood through a healthy body, with less friction, less spoilage, less needless delay. He saw common people traveling farther for work, for kin, for study, for wonder. The village would grow planetary. The horizon, once a wall, would become a door. Then economics, that stern and often joyless steward of human appetite, appeared before him not as a ledger, but as a weather system. Scarcity, which had long sat upon the neck of man like winter upon a field, would not disappear entirely. Nothing mortal escapes limit, but it would be redefined. Supply would no longer mean simply what could be mined, shipped, or hoarded. Value would grow increasingly from design, access, coordination, intelligence, and time. Ownership itself would be questioned. Waste would be treated as ignorance. Efficiency would become not merely an industrial virtue, but a moral one. In such a world, those who could learn, adapt, interpret, and build wisely would not be idle pilgrims in someone else's empire, but rightful architects of the coming order. Yet, even in his vision, there was no smooth ascent without fracture. For he saw, too, the strange citadel of quantum invention, shimmering, elusive, more rumor than fortress at first. It appeared to him like a palace made of frost and lightning, beautiful to behold, impossible to inhabit, and forever threatening to vanish at the touch. Around it clustered the scholars, the investors, the statesmen, the merchants of miracle, each proclaiming the dawn before the night had truly broken. And indeed, there would be failures, loud ones, expensive ones, public humiliations wrapped in technical language, machines that promised revelation but delivered confusion, breakthroughs that broke upon the rocks of reality, winter seasons of doubt, sober years in which the world would ask whether it had mistaken moonlight for marble. But the thinker did not despair at this. He knew that all profound inventions are first betrayed by their own infancy. The flying machine was once a joke, the ocean cable a folly, the engine a monstrous toy. So too would this new arithmetic of matter stammer before it spoke. There would come, he felt, a pivotal hour, not sudden like a trumpet blast, but cumulative as snowfall, when enough data, enough failure, enough patience, enough bruised ambition would finally compose the missing chord. Then the impossible would not become easy, but workable, not magic, but method. And the world, as ever, would call inevitable what it had mocked the decade before. Still, beyond machines and markets and all polished triumphs, he saw something greater and more intimate, the orchestration of life itself, returning in some measure to the individual soul. For too long, many had lived as though existence were a parchment spoiled by one wrong stroke, as though a mistaken trade, a poor season, a false start, a late beginning, a wounded reputation, or a youthful ignorance might doom the whole manuscript. But the future, he thought, must bend away from such cruelty. Education would need to cease being merely a gate and become a current one might re-enter. Employment would need to cease being merely permission and become participation. Life itself would need structures that allow revision, not the erasure of consequence, but the mercy of continuation. He imagined a civilization in which no earnest error becomes permanently unwritable, where learning may be resumed without disgrace, where a worker may become a student and a student a builder, where one may fail publicly and yet remain fit for usefulness, where human development is not sealed like a king's decree, but redrafted like a living charter. Such a world would not abolish suffering, for no age has done so, nor will any, but it might deny suffering the right to become destiny. Then the heavens above his inward sight deepened, and he beheld humanity as if from some celestial balcony. How small we were, like sparks borne upward from a campfire into the cathedral dark. How radiant, too. Our laboratories glowed like monasteries of glass. Our ports flickered like jeweled hinges upon the rim of continents. Our satellites hung like watchful silver seeds in the upper blackness. Everywhere, men and women were bent over devices, engines, equations, canvases, classrooms, codebases, designs, and blueprints. Not merely working for bread, but unconsciously chiseling at the very next century. And it came to him then that the future is not built first by certainty, but by disciplined imagination. Not by those who scream loudest that they know what comes, but by those humble enough to prepare for several dawns at once. The clear path forward is never granted entire. It is discovered in fragments, in studies, in prototypes, in principles, in patient collaboration, and in the stubborn refusal to waste one's life upon trivial mastery when greater labors call. Thus, the thinker descended from his meditation with no prophecy in his pocket and no holy diagram rolled beneath his arm. He carried instead a sterner comfort, that there are seasons when the best one may do is choose worthy directions. Learn what sharpens the mind, build what expands human possibility, study energy, movement, computation, communication, systems, and the old unglamorous art of making things work. Refuse the narcotic of passive wonder. Refuse also the cowardice of cynicism. Stand ready, where the world is not merely changing, but converging. For the stars themselves do not hurry, yet they govern oceans. And mankind, though often foolish, though often divided, though forever late to the wisdom it most needs, remains a species with its face lifted upward. One day, the roads will lengthen into the sky. One day, distance will yield. One day, power will grow cleaner, travel swifter, systems wiser, and the mistakes that once buried a life will become instead the compost of second beginnings. Until then, the future waits like a great unopened atlas upon the table of creation, its pages trembling in the candlewind, asking only this of us. Not that we predict it perfectly, but that we prepare in earnest. But that we become worthy of arriving there.